From the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight. The NFL Draft has concluded. The Broncos come away with 9 players in the NFL Draft, 6 defense, 3 on the offensive side of the ball. Borderline wide receiver, kick returner there, so more special teams with Montrell Washington. But Ben, let's go ahead and start with the top pick in Nick Benito, who, tip of the cap to you, sir. You had that one.
Yeah, it won't come as a surprise to Broncos Country Tonight fans. We've been talking about Nick Benito for a minute there. Casa Benito, to those of you in the know.
Would you apologize to him during an interview?
To his face. Like, I'm so sorry for doing this to you. I'm going to keep doing it, but I'm sorry for doing it to you. No, I mean, we kind of knew that was coming. He was one of the players that they had kind of had a circle around to be in that area that they liked. And that was, after talking to people over there, that was kind of the name that everybody thought it was going to be. So, that was, I thought that was pretty good. I like what he brings to the table. I think he can be an eventual starting pass rusher on this team. I think that pick puts Bradley Chubb on notice. I really do. And I think that I think it gives you great depth this season, but it gives you a path forward because the Chubb situation is weird. If Bradley doesn't play that well, then you're going to move on from him because he didn't play that well. If he gets hurt, you're going to move on from him because he keeps getting hurt. But then if he plays extremely well, you may not want to pay him what it would take because you just paid Randy Gregory and drafted Nick Benito.
And you have Russell Wilson that you're going
to have to take care of, and you paid a safety and Justin Simmons, so the money just may not be there when all's said and done. So that's one of those things that I think it gives you a path forward, and you're hoping he turns into the guy to rush from that side. And he'll remind guys a little bit, kind of a diet Von Miller, at least in terms of what he brings to the table early in his career on the field.
I love his variety of pass rush moves that he's already got. His spin move is reminiscent of Von Miller. So, again, not a direct comp, but I'm 100% with you.
I'm not trying to invoke a Hall of Fame pass rusher right off the bat, but he's kind of got a similar skill set coming into the league, and so that's going to be interesting.
All right, so then with their second pick, they take Greg Dolcich out of UCLA, a tight end, which was one of my favorite players in the draft. I had Trey McBride as the number 1 tight end, but I had Greg Dolcich in that same tier, same conversation. For me, and again, not to bring up Hall of Famers here, but he is Travis Kelce light in a lot of ways. I think that he's going to have to improve as a blocker. We all kind of know that part. He was very quick to point out that he's a better blocker than people are giving credit for. I think more than anything, though, he is exactly what the tight end position has become, a mismatch downfield catching passes, and he immediately slots into the role that Noah Fant had here.
Well, it was just nice of George Payton to call me, Ben, you still good with Benito, Ryan, you still good with Dolcich, kind of making the early no.
Yeah, that's a real thing.
That's a real thing that definitely happened. No, I think it's a good pick. I mean, he needs to develop his blocking. That's the thing. You invoke Travis Kelce, and I think as a pass catcher, you're not wrong. But Travis Kelce also came in the league a much better blocker, and that's the thing.
But it took Travis Kelce a couple of years. It wasn't until year 3 that he really jumped on the scene. But yes, as a blocker, he was more proficient early on, but it was year 3 when he really became what he is now.
Right. And, he's Dolcich has incredible athleticism. He catches the ball well. In fact, when we were talking about pre-draft, I said he's a yoked up wide receiver. I mean, he kind of is. He's really good at catching the ball. So if you bring in a too tight set and you're kind of intent on getting him out into pass patterns, I think that's a good thing. It creates a mismatch because I don't think most linebackers are going to be able to keep up. You're going to have to go with a corner, and the corner's going to be too small. You get a one-on-one out there, and he can break one tackle, he's off to the races. So it creates some good mismatch stuff there. I like him. I liked his attitude. He wants to be here, and that's one of those things that sells me. When you get a chance to talk to a guy, and I know, I asked the question to Peyton and Hackett, how much of a guy being there, and they said it doesn't. Everybody wants to be there, but this is a little bit different, and I liked it. It kind of sold me a little bit, and you get a little jazzed about guys that want to be there.
Well, it's a path to snaps on the field almost immediately. I mean, how many times if you get drafted, whether it's 3rd round or whatever, you're fighting for snaps early on. I mean, Albert Okwuegbunam, I'm a huge fan of his. I think he's a complete tight end. But the fact remains there's going to be opportunities for Dolcich to see the field where if he went to another team that maybe had a deep tight end roster, he'd have to fight for those snaps.
Well, that's right. And I know you got Eric Tomlinson on the roster, and I'm not trying to say Eric's slower than molasses in January, but
he's a blocking tight end.
He's a glorified tackle who's listed as a tight end, and that's really what that is.
He's going to catch a touchdown pass this year.
Eric Tomlinson?
Mark the tape. Eric Tomlinson catch
probably one, like some rando. It'll be some rando touch. It'll be like the first one of the season.
That's
too.
right.
Everybody will be like, "Why did we draft Dolcich?" It'll be like one of those things, but he'll get the one. Yeah, just usually those guys you want to establish them early, so watch. It'll be like in the first couple of weeks of the season. But yeah, I like the first two picks. I wasn't as high as Dolcich in the process, but getting him in here and talking to him, I mean, I'm cool.
Get to the fourth round here. The Broncos had back-to-back picks. They take Damari Mathis, cornerback out of Pitt, and then Wazurike, defensive lineman out of Iowa State. I got a chance to watch them quite a bit over the last couple of days. I really like this Mathis kid. And it's funny because there was a lot of cornerbacks in that range that I was a little bit higher on. But the more I watched Mathis, I think there's some versatility there. You can play him on the inside, play him on the outside. 4.39 guy, super physical. I mean, there's certainly parts of his game that you'd like to improve on. Again, I know that he gets knocked for his height, but in the end, for me, like, can you play or can you play? And he didn't look like the height thing bothered him.
Yeah, well, that 42.5-inch vertical certainly doesn't hurt either.
Not at all.
He can jump out of the gym.
I didn't get that sense when I was watching him play on the outside or inside. It's like nobody's going up against this guy and winning a lot of these matchups.
Right. Kind of looks like he's on the pogo stick.
Yeah.
I think he's more of an athlete than a football player at this point. He got by in college on just incredible athleticism. I'd like to see him develop the technique, refine himself. I'd like to see his hands get a little stickier too. He had some balls he could have caught that could have been more interceptions, a little bit of the Darby-itis, if you will, but being disruptive in pass breakups, an incompletion is still an incompletion.
He's sticky though in his coverage.
Right.
He's very sticky in his coverage.
In a lot of cases, a pass deflection or a pass breakup on third down, some cases that's better than an interception. You might get better field position. So,
okay, let's get to the other player, Wazurike here, and he played all over the defensive line. Think he probably profiles as a bit of a 5, but you know what? They played him at nose quite a bit at Iowa State, and they moved him around. I mean, in some ways, not a direct comp, but he kind of reminds me a little bit of Mike Purcell, right? One of the things that Wazurike, I appreciated about those tree trunk arms, because even if he doesn't get there, he's reaching around and swinging those things. And he sometimes gets sacks or pressures just as a result of there's no way an offensive tackle or an offensive guard can hold him in position when he's swinging his arms. I mean, there's so many pressures he came away with, TFLs, just as a result of swinging his arms around.
Just running around doing the waving arms.
That was incredible.
That. It's great. They moved him around a lot. They had him at the 1, 3, the 5. They had him out at the 7 tech out wide sometimes, and he profiles as, believe it or not, partially as an edge type guy. I don't think you're going to see him as an edge rusher in place of like Benito or Gregory or Chubb.
I just don't think he has the speed to be that guy.
But the tape speed's a little bit better than the time speed. I was talking to Alfred Williams a little earlier, and he pointed something out. He doesn't get wide enough when he runs. He runs narrow.
Yes,
and that's a problem.
Agreed.
And I totally agree with that. But he was used up and down the line, and you can have a heavy package where you have 4 down linemen and use him as an end. And that takes away that, you use him, Purcell, DJ, and maybe even Draymond outside, take the edge rushers off in a run package, and now all of a sudden you've got strong guys that can set the edge on their run and let those linebackers freelance, get back there and make a play on the ball. So there are sub-package type stuff where he could be out there as far as the 7. I'd never put him out in a wide 9 stance. He's not that guy, and he's really, you're probably right, he really is more at home as the 5 tech, and he'll probably play mostly 3 and 5, and George specifically mentioned 4-eye. So those are probably the spots that he'll play.
Yeah, it lines up, but I was cracking up watching him some more today. I mean, I'd seen him up to this point, but now that he's a Bronco, I want to dive a little bit deeper and just watching those tree trunks swing, and he was getting pressures, he was getting tackles, and they were engaged. It didn't matter.
Yeah, he's a strong guy. He's real strong lower half. I spent the day diving in on the tape a little bit on, not necessarily on him. I put on our boy from Samford.
I want to talk about Montreal here. Let's get to the 5th rounders. Let's talk about Delaren Turner-Yell, safety at Oklahoma. Boy, he has Kareem Jackson vibes all over the place.
A clone physically, clone with the
tone
with the
setting,
size,
tackles,
with the style that he plays with. He's a diet Kareem Jackson. It's kind of a way. I think Kareem was a little faster at that point in his career,
but it's hard not to watch him and be like, oh, well, that now I know what your role is.
Right. I know who you are.
Yeah.
So.
Which is great. And listen, they drafted a couple of Oklahoma players. This is Nick Benito's best friend, as Nick Benito told us.
Buddy, yeah, his weightlifting buddy and his friend. And I think it's interesting. One thing I want to point out right now is George Payton likes to have player support systems in the locker room for the young guys coming in. You look back to last year, Baron Browning, Jonathan Cooper. You look at this year, you've got Nick Benito, you got Turner Yell, and then you go back and you look at the Wisconsin kids. They get the defensive end in the corner
Matt
as well.
Henningson, Feon Hicks.
Yeah.
Yep.
They love to double dip from schools and have a little bit of a support system.
I'm all about it. So De'Aaron Turner Yell. I think that there's some people that had some concerns about that pick and why there was there. I mean, there's a lot of talented players around it, but the Broncos clearly on day 3, they were targeting guys that they felt they had the upside and that they were fit for what they're doing here from a cultural standpoint as well as from a personality and play standpoint. So I don't have a problem with it. If they have a role for him, I'm all about it. The question, the biggest one that comes up here is their second, 5th round pick, and that's Montrell Washington, wide receiver returner out of Samford.
Not Stanford, Samford.
And he was just as surprised to be drafted as I think a lot of people.
Shocked on the phone call with us. I mean, he was like legitimately at a loss for words, stumbling. He still it hadn't hit him yet that he was still stunned.
We were in the middle of the draft, and I'm like, all full disclosure. Most of these guys I've seen at least a little bit of. I have, not deep dive on all of them, but I've seen I'm like, Montrell Washington. Like, I got to go find this guy.
Well, I remember the Florida tape because I remember watching that game live. I remember watching that game live and seeing a one-man wrecking crew out there, and I was like, who is this guy that is dominating he's the only guy they have, and he is killing an SEC defense right now. Yep. And, and then you kind of forget about it, after a little while and don't file it away. And then sure enough, his name gets called on draft day. And I'm telling you, you guys want to see some of the most incredible tape you've ever seen. Watch this Samford kid against Florida. That is an SEC defense, and he boat raced him in every facet of the game. They lined him up at running back to him the pitch, touchdown. They throw him wide receiver, throw him the fade, touchdown.
And a punt return,
they punt off to him, touchdown. It's just they could not stop him, and it's fascinating to watch. And I think he's going to be a fan favorite here in Denver. I really do. Right now, everybody's dogging that pick and being like, "Oh, this is a bad pick. We're going to grade the mock lower or whatever." Give him a chance. I think you're going to like him.
No, he's certainly a fun personality. I know we enjoyed talking to him, and he was over the moon. Mm-hmm. And he gave a great answer, too. I asked him about punt returns and kick returns and sort of just the mindset of being a returner. And the way he broke it down was fantastic. He's like, look, I put everything I have into it because the guys in front of me are putting everything they have into it. And I just thought that was such a cool mindset there for a returner. So I'm looking forward to seeing him. And then they trade up in the draft to get Luke Wattenberg, center out of Washington, who inevitably, might be the case. And I got a text from a couple of NFL people about him. He could be a center for the Broncos for the long term. I'm not so sure about year 1. We'll see what happens in camp. But don't sleep on this pick as just a 5th round pick. They really like him.
Yeah, he's a versatile lineman, has played all along the left side, went from tackle to guard to center. Wouldn't be surprised if he latched on at guard or center for this football team. So early on, he's probably going to be the backup along 3 or 4, 3 positions. But it'd be nice to see what he grows into. And I do think left guard center is probably his home.
All right, so we get to the 6th round, and what is being considered one of the steals for the Broncos, as it turns out, is Matt Henningson, defensive lineman out of Wisconsin. And boy, this might be one of the smartest dudes in the locker room. I'm looking forward to having more conversations. We had a really fun interview with him as well. But I tell you what, I mean, he's a great run stuffer. I mean, as far as right off the bat, what he brings to this team, and I don't know if he sees the field in year 1 or if he's going to be a little bit more of a project. But as a year 1 guy, he can eat up gaps. He can eat up run gaps, and I am a big fan of that, especially if you come in and you have that role, and then the Broncos need that. I already like him already for that.
Another guy to me that profiled more as a 43 right defensive end than necessarily a 34-5 tech or whatever. So I really do think that they're going to convert. They say there's still 34 principles, and maybe they're going to keep those principles 1 gap versus 2 gap. But I think that I get the idea they're going to go with more of a cloud front that looks more like a 4-3 than a 3-4 in terms of how they line up. So and Vic, we were running basically a 5-2. With how they lined up. So it'll be interesting to see how they do that. I like him. I like him a lot. I think he sticks around, and I look forward to him and Calvin Anderson taking dueling SATs.
And then the last pick here, Feon Hicks from Wisconsin. So back-to-back Wisconsin picks. And Feon Hicks is another guy, I think, it kind of goes to show that this draft was just, so deep. We had the extra COVID year. You had guys coming back. Feon Hicks, I think, would have probably been a mid-round guy if it were any other draft. But here he is as a 7th rounder. And again, paired up there with Wisconsin. the Broncos clearly with an intention to continue to add, and I think that there's always this intention, continue to add DBs to the team because you just can't have enough of them.
Yeah, I talked to some of the Broncos scouting staff about him briefly, and he's a real tough guy. Matter of fact, that's what they said about him. He's quiet. He's a quiet guy, but when he speaks, you listen, and he's just a tough guy. I relayed one of those stories, I think, where he broke his foot when he was 5, and he just didn't even want the crutches. He didn't want his leg to atrophy. Even as a kid, he's like, I'll just hop around until I put a cast on it and hop around until it's ready to go. He just didn't want to,
It was so cool, and I love that the Broncos do this on their social, but they always film the calls, right? And so the Feon Hicks call, you're a 7th rounder. Sometimes you're actually hoping you don't get drafted because you hope you get a call. But when he got the call, you could hear the entire family screaming. He's crying. Everybody's crying, just overwhelmed with emotion. And I mean, that's what it's about, man. I mean, that's cool. And you're a 7th rounder, and yet you're like, I'm getting to continue my dream as a football player. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, there you go. That is our breakdown of the 2022 NFL Draft Class for Benjamin Allbright. I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.